George, I'll be honest with you. I'm failing at it. 100%.
When I left that organization, I also left social media. And when I did that, of course, everything falls to zero. So I went to a couple of different assignments, all the way up through my senior major time at Brigade and above. I worked at Corps, I worked at Division, worked at 8th Army in Korea. I watched a lot of my peers leave service because of the nonstop back-to-back deployments. And I just immediately hit the ground with deployments and didn't stop for probably the first half of my career.
Hi, and welcome to Veterans Corner. I'm George Hinestrosa, Air Force and Army retired veteran of 25 years and a business owner for 8 years. Here on the show, we explore how military experience transforms into business success. Each episode features veterans who built thriving businesses, sharing strategies that turn military training into entrepreneurial advantage. The mission is to inspire and equip transitioning service members with practical knowledge and real-world insights from veterans who've built their businesses in many different industries. And today's guest is Brandon Duncan. Welcome to Veterans Corner, Brandon.
Well, how you doing, George? Appreciate you letting me on here.
Great, sir. And thanks for being here today. What happens when you combine 23 years of military logistics expertise, 2 master's degrees, and an obsession with breaking AI systems just to figure out why they fail? You get someone who's redefining how small business compete with enterprise giants. Our guest today, Brandon Duncan, has managed supply chains for 60,000 personnel, directed $200 million in assets across multiple continents, and won 3 national awards for operational excellence. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of pursuing comfortable corporate consulting, he decided to wage war on the biggest problem facing American small businesses: being priced out of the tools they need to succeed. Brandon spent over 2 decades mastering complex military operations under pressure. He could have stopped there, but during his civilian transition, he discovered that small businesses, the backbone of our economy, were being left behind by a tech industry focused on million-dollar enterprise solutions. So he taught himself to become an AI expert by systematically breaking every system he could find, then rebuilding them better. Now, through smarter, used services, he's created affordable alternatives to enterprise software. So Brandon. Yeah.
Big focus on breaking things.
Yeah. So you're the man, brother. So tell us when this all started. How did you as a young man just decide what prompted you first of all to get into the service, and why, did you have mentors? Did you have family members? I mean, what exactly was in your heart as a young man prior to entering the service?
Well, so mentorship is a whole nother conversation. We talk about it a lot in the military, but I think a lot of people have a foundational misunderstanding of what mentorship actually is, and how it occurs. But going back, so my father was a lifelong military vet himself. I started off in the Navy, did 3 years in the Navy, and then did another 24 in the Air Force. And then found out later that my grandfather, before him, had attempted to join the Army, got hurt in basic training, and then he was out. And then smattered throughout, we've had, family members in the Marines, I think a few in the Navy and stuff like that. But they're all from that older generation where it was almost required to serve. So it was a little bit of that. I joined a little bit late. I didn't come in until I was 26. So it was one of those things that I was actually just trying to get my crap together. And I had a budding family at the time that I needed to take care of. And that was the smartest option, I think. So why I chose the Army, couldn't tell you.
Seemed like right for you to do at the time.
Yeah, a lot of it came down to beneficiaries and things like that, or dependents. A lot of services don't like you to have a lot of dependents. And at the time I had 3. So it was the Army was amenable to that.
So tell us a little bit about your Army career. I mean, what were some of the challenges as a young man coming in? Did you face anything that you maybe just fish out of water, or did you just soak it all up and drive on? As the motto goes, right?
So I joined a little bit late. I didn't join till I was 26. So there's inherent challenges with that. I went through basic with several most of the class or the cohort, whatever you want to call it, they were all split option high school kids. I was in an overflow session during the summer. So there was a lot of younger kids that they weren't even going to be going on to AIT until that following summer. So the attitudes, the motivations were a lot different. So I did that. I came in as a fueler, as a PFC or an E3 for the other services. Um, and I just immediately hit the ground with deployments and didn't stop for probably the first half of my career. Calmed down at that midpoint and then started it back up again towards the end. So I ended up with 6 combat tours and then 1 additional PCS overseas to Kuwait, where I deployed to the.
Or some of those tours. I mean, just or some.
I've been to Qatar, Kuwait, Iraq several times, Afghanistan, and then back to Kuwait 2 more times after that. So it was all Middle East. Wasn't able to go anywhere else, do anything like that. It was kind of ironic that the first base I had ever been to overseas, like coming back out of Iraq, whenever we did that stuff, was where I ended up PCSing to. I mean, they had everything except for family and a commissary. I mean, it was wild to see the transition and how things changed over, the 22, 23 years that I did this stuff. But as far as challenges, it just, it was one of those things that it was on again, off again, on again, off again. I watched a lot of my peers leave service because of the nonstop back-to-back deployments. But I also commissioned 6 years in. So came in as a PFC, made it up to E5 sergeant. And then I picked up the green to gold active duty option in its 3rd year. They were still only taking about 100 people a year. I'm convinced to this day the only reason I commissioned was because I figured out how to put the packet together. That was the biggest hurdle on that one. Nobody knew what was going on. I had no help. I was just kind of going through it. But I ended up making it to this year, or last year rather, in April. No, this year. I would have either gone on to get my first look as lieutenant colonel or move on to greener pastures. And it was one of those things. Mentally, I was still okay to continue service. Physically, I think I started kind of falling behind, or at least I felt I was falling behind. So I made the decision to step out of the way and let those below me make their way up and take those slots. So, they always tell you just kind of know. And for me, that was it. You just starting to get a little long in the tooth, and you eat it up as fast as it.
Absolutely. So what were maybe some of the main challenges you maybe feel? So as you went from enlisted to commissioned as an officer, well, how did you find that transition? How did, going from one to the other? How did you feel like you fit in? Did you feel like you're still an NCO, or a lot of people just especially when you've come from the NCO ranks and you become an officer. A lot of people say that usually officers become better officers when they're prior enlisted, right? So I don't know how true that is, because
So my motivation for it was I wanted to be a good leader. I never really had any aspiration beyond like company command. Battalion command was not something that I had really considered, and I kind of enjoyed my staff time just as much as I did command time. But so I wanted to be able to touch as many people as I could and affect their lives, be the leader that they wanted, and I did get consistently get those comments back from my subordinates and my soldiers was, hey, this guy gets it, Lieutenant Duncan, he's the man, this and that and the other. Obviously, I never let it get to my head, but the catch to that, there's a flip side to every coin. yes, you become a better leader because you understand where they're coming from, and you understand the challenges and the troubles from receiving bad commands, bad instructions, poor communication and things like that. But from a career perspective, it holds you back. So when you get to this more senior ranks, uh, because you can empathize too much, because you will take pause instead of just issuing the order, because you think about it a little bit too much, it starts to become a detriment when you start getting to those operational and tactical levels. And I was on very senior staffs for the last several years of my career, and I saw it, and it's nothing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not like, please don't take it as, colonels and generals don't care about their soldiers. They absolutely do,
Right.
but the decision making space and the speed at which you have to make decisions, you don't have time to stop and take those pauses. And people like me still did. And that's where it kind of separates right a little bit, I think. So no knock against any kind of seniors at all, but a lot of people just don't see the pressure and the way that tactical to operational to strategic actually works. And I was fortunate enough to see all of it. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for that insight, right? And and everyone, I guess, has a little bit of a different experience, but thank you for that because yeah, I've worked with many officers, had great leadership, and some of them were prior enlisted, and you can notice, we always said that once you go to major school, right, you become a mate, right? You come back lobotomized, right? Is like so up to a cap, and then after that, it's just I don't know this guy, you know.
yeah, yeah, we joke about the same things.
There's a military purpose for that, and I can understand it, obviously. Um, as you progressed and you're going on with your career, at what point did you say, "Okay, it's time for me," or when did the entrepreneurial spirit start to kick in, and when did you say, "Okay, it's time for me to start making my move"?
So this is actually kind of a funnier story. So everybody focuses on a certain thing while they're in service. Some people strive to be the PT stud, right? Other people want to be in command for as absolutely long as they possibly can, and they will do everything that they can to do that. Other people, it's a job. Sometimes it's the travel. For me, it was education, civilian education. I won't say smart enough. A lot of service members are smart enough to figure it out, but for me, I knew that this was always temporary, and that's the one constant with all military service is that it will end at some point. So my concern was, how do I make sure from the very beginning that I'm able to transition into the civilian world and still be okay? And the answer to that was education. And even before the service, I had started going to school for actually being an elementary education teacher. As I was going through my elementary education core instruction, I had to do like an internship of sorts where I had to help a teacher set up a classroom during the summer, getting prepared for the new school year. And it was honestly kind of depressing because, you see all these budding minds and you want to get all these kids, into this flow of learning and being excited about learning. And they're stuck inside of these cinder block walls with no windows and, just this thing. So that kind of discouraged me a little bit. And I felt it was a little bit of a disservice. So I switched to business back for my undergrad. When I commissioned, fast forward several years, I was able to go back and finish that degree, which was great. Did my undergrad in management, or business administration with a focus in management. When I continued through service, once I commissioned and I finished that degree, it was it was almost a little bit addictive in a way. I That was the first, besides being an Eagle Scout, that was the first major accomplishment that I had finished, and I liked the feeling of it. So at the time, the military was still paying for advanced college and things like that. You had it wasn't the GI Bill; it was another pot of money. So I tapped immediately into that and worked on a master's, and I got a master's in education, teaching and curriculum. So from there, when I did my commissioning program, I thought it was just another part of the out processing checklist. We went through all these different stations and they're like, okay, what are you going to do with this? How are you doing this? And I got down to the end and they're like, okay, do you want branch of choice, duty station of choice, or grad school? Well, at the time, I knew I still wanted to stay in logistics, and at the time, it was funneling up from, ordnance, quartermaster, and transportation all went to and merged at logistics. So I was like, well, I've already got a good shot of getting the branch of choice. I know if I take duty station of choice, then I could end up being like a tanker. Nothing wrong with tankers, but it was just not my calling. So I was like, oh, I'll do grad school. Well, later on, I didn't end up needing it because I already had my master's. It wasn't going to help my career, and this is when I was still planning on taking it as far as I could. And they came back, HRC came back and said, look, you have to do this. You've already spent the time. Like, don't pass this up. So at the time, I talked to my spouse and I was like, look, I don't need another degree. I'm doing it because the Army's telling me to do it. So you pick a place that you think you want to live. I will find a school that's close. And turns out, she at the time she said, "Well, can we go to Disney World?" And then I was like, I don't care, whatever." So I've actually found a little liberal arts college just north of Orlando, Florida, and it turned out to be absolutely the best program for my MPA that I could have ever chosen. They just released a list on the best grad schools, and I think it's number 75 on the list. It was the best in Florida at the time for return on investment. And it was during that period that I really discovered consultancy, and my focus was on entrepreneurship and sustainability. So that solving problems was something that I always enjoyed, and that fit right into that entrepreneurial spirit. Is pick a problem, pick a gap. How do you solve the hard problems for this that? And there's tons of people in the Deloittes and, and all those places in the world that are solving things for corporations, but there's very few that are trying to help the little guy.
Right.
Me being in a support role, I support the little guy. So that's just part of my nature. I enjoy that support role, and it just all clicked.
Right. Yeah. Everyone has a, I guess we're born with certain things, right? Certain qualities. We align ourselves with certain types of ideology or certain types of things, right? And service, I think, is always very noble, right? When you're providing service, I think we serve our country, we get out and serve, right? Even the Bible says to serve, right? To serve. I came to serve, not to be served. And, better to give than to receive. So I'm very in line with all that. If you want to call it karma or everything. I think the more you put out, the more you get back. I think that's just one of those kind of synergistic things.
Absolutely.
So so how soon after that did you actually like depart from the service? I mean, what challenges after grad school? What did you find? Okay, now that I got grad school, now what am I going to do? Right. So
Yeah. So getting done with the MBA program, from there, that was where I found out some of the truth in the system. Right. So I had gotten passed over for for major on my first look, uh, just because the amount of time I did spend in school and some of my ratings as I came up. I was never a bad officer or even enlisted, but I was never one of those guys that really plays a game well to get those top blocks. I did what, I always had a system of whatever I do, I'm going to be able to sleep at night, and I was always 100% focused on soldiers. And it sounds very cliche, but that was honestly the way I really looked at things. So I did not play the game well, and it showed in my ratings. When I finished grad school, or midway through, I got passed over for major, so I was kind of sweating it and figuring, I wasn't sure if that was going to be the time that my service ended. Fortunately, I picked it up the following year, and from there, I went on, and there was only certain places that I could go based on the fact that I had been passed over and some of these other kinds of things. So it forced me into a higher headquarters. And from there, once you make it into those kind of headquarters, you tend to stay in those kind of headquarters. So I went to a couple of different assignments, all the way up through my senior major time at brigade and above. I worked at Corps, I worked at Division, worked at 8th Army in Korea. And so doing all that stuff, the challenge really just became, how do you not only lead peers, but how do you lead your seniors as well? And learning all of those things from big army, not just battalion level ops, but big army, and how all this stuff works. The learning curve was absolutely outrageous.
Right.
And I ended up in organizations that otherwise I probably would not have, very niche operations like SDDC, the Eighth Army, headquarters. I was a battalion XO for the Korean Service Corps Battalion, the biggest battalion in the Army, and short of 3 green suiters, it was 100% Korean civilians that were paramilitary. And I didn't speak nor did I write Korean. So I was just
Easiest language to learn.
yeah, just
Not the
constantly
easiest
placed in
language
all
to
these
learn.
challenges.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really it was just drinking from a fire hose. I've been every position.
Challenge. Okay, so now you're deciding to get out. So the entrepreneurial bug here, how does that hit you? So that just take us to maybe the last couple of positions you had before getting into smarter your to your current CEO position in your company.
So the one prior, like I said, I was the XO for the KSC battalion. From there, I started looking at things like, how do you solve logistical challenges for businesses when you're. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of products in the United States that are sourced from Asia. So, and one of the things that I had always heard and that I've always kind of known as fact is that the logistics of getting products and goods and services and things like that from Asia to the United States is not easy, especially not for small home businesses and things like that. Yes, they've got those systems out there that you can do, but it's not as easy as just throwing it onto UPS and doing those things. So I started really paying attention to that as I went through. And then I went from there to Kuwait. And the reason I did that was because I knew I wanted to end up back where I was now to retire. And the only pathway to get there, because I was not able to get a job directly at Fort Polk, probably the only person in the Army that was not able to go to Fort Polk that wanted to. So I wear that one as a badge. But if I went to Kuwait and did one more kind of um, what I forget the term for it, but like a hardship tour, I guess, where I take the family. They would give you my choice of duty station coming back. So I did Kuwait, but they're actually did that here. So I went and did the STDC thing from there. And my boss ended up leaving, so I became the boss, and they didn't hire anybody else in. So I jumped, up roles for there, and I picked up a lot of institutional knowledge just from doing that. So then getting done with that, I came down here and I basically just kind of helped out some of the contractors with, I would call it project management. I think it was a lot of the design of some of the senior level logistics organization plans. Because the way that the national training centers are starting to work is they're starting to become more division focused, and they currently lack some of the structure for how some of the higher headquarters operate. So I had a lot of that information and understood how it works. So I worked doing that. And then about 10 months in, I think is when I retired. I just decided that was enough. Uh,
How do you feel your leadership style may have evolved from you wearing the uniform to getting out and now, being in with civilians, right? Do you still carry that identity as a veteran? How much of that influences your daily life, or did you just kind of soak it all in and just.
I think everything's kind of in the eye of the beholder. One of the things I prided myself on that I picked up when I was learning about education was not to be so rigid and stuck on one particular process. If you're in the middle of something and it's not working, if it's not clicking, the student's not picking it up, you've got to be able to pivot. And if you look at the education system as a whole, especially public education, there's a lot of teachers that don't know how to pivot away from that style. They use what they learned, and if it doesn't work, then the child falls behind. Well, I was okay. Yeah, we'll just use a sports analogy. I'm not even a sports guy, but I can turn something into a sports analogy, and I can pivot and figure out what it is that helps that child understand or to learn. I carried that forward with my soldiers. I carried that forward with my peers, and I continue to do all of that. It works with adults like you and I. Right. If you were to turn the corner on me, then, I'd be able to keep up to a certain extent. I may not have all the information right, but I would still understand how to communicate with you to get where we needed to go. Um, Now I still constantly get, people tell me I'm very direct, somewhat intimidating. I've just, type A, which honestly, I feel like I'm more type C when I really look at, whenever I do stuff. So you have to work through those barriers. And I watch a lot of veterans, particularly on LinkedIn and stuff like that, that talk about, this isn't going to work. There's no rank system in corporate. So all the things that you keep talking about and talk about all your military service, like you don't have the rank to back it up anymore. You don't need to. It's all in how you deal with people and how you work with people. Yeah, exactly. And being able to pivot and meet people where they are. It's really it's difficult to learn, but it's not a hard concept.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I think, and I might refer back to biblical things, right? Because that's kind of one of my main foundations since I was a kid. But, Christ, for instance, Jesus, whenever he talked to any crowd, any specific crowd, whether it was the priests or the farmers or the publicans or whoever it was, he always talked to them at their level, right? He never talked above them or below them. He knew, he had tact enough to know how to address that particular mindset, right? So you have to have that tact. You have to almost know what they're thinking, right? I kind of get into the conversation properly, right? Because if not, there's going to be, so you have to kind of be able to draw them in and just have them open up. So no, totally makes sense, man. I mean, it's
Where's the term for it? It's wisdom.
right. Exactly.
Is that it? Wisdom isn't necessarily about being the smartest guy in the room. It's understanding your surroundings and knowing when to make this move, when to say this thing, how to incorporate. I think the biggest challenge with what I'm facing now is honestly just getting small business owners to open up. And they're talked to so much, and there's so much information that they're just bombarded with constantly over and over and over again, that the information becomes overload. They don't know who to trust anymore.
Right.
And trust is so hard to build. But that's the space that I live in, just trying to get small business owners to open up about challenges that they're having without feeling embarrassed that they don't understand a concept or they don't know how things work. Yeah, and I've got the requisite background information, but how do I portray that to them? How do I get them to trust that, I'm giving them tools to do what's best for themselves.
Right.
I'm not running with their
Those tools, right? Ethical and practical, right?
Absolutely.
So as you started your business now, how do you what do you feel is like your main, like if you as an entrepreneur now, what do you feel that you would want to happen? What I mean, you're kind of saying it now, right? But what exactly? Because I mean, we're trying to get down to the nitty gritty of what we're thinking, what the convulsions we have in our minds, what are the mental gymnastics, all these things that we go through as human beings, because we're all in this together. Everyone that has a business knows how difficult or how challenging it could be, or at the beginning, or maybe it's always challenging depending on where you're standing, right? But how can we as veterans unite? I mean, have you ever thought on the big scale, with, like you just mentioned, LinkedIn, and I looked at LinkedIn, and this is kind of one of the reasons I started this podcast, not to become a star, but I just see like so many people with potential out there doing their own thing. But then again, we have the veterans that here we are. I mean, we all have business. We can all work together. We can all support each other. We can all feed off of each other, right? And just like we would in a unit, right? If we're in a unit, you bring what you have, I bring what I have. We put it together and we make the mission work, right? We don't.
So if you want to analogize the situation that way, it comes down to fear and those old blue falcons that were in the unit, is the way that I see it. E- e- People are afraid to put their ideas out there, even if it's a half baked, not fleshed out idea. If you put that idea out there, someone's going to take it, and then they're out. So that fear makes you turn back in on yourself, and then you try to rely on yourself, and you try to rely on improper and just bad systems for how to learn how to do it. They talk about your network being the most important thing, and how mentorship is the most important thing, and all these concepts. But when it comes down to it, everybody's going to hit it from a different angle. I had a business that I was attempting to start, and it was just a writing business. It wasn't even anything, wild and whatever.
Right.
It was about bringing together news and things like that. But every professor I talked to about it, every staff member I talked to about it, they all came from their individual experience. I had one guy say, "Don't do anything until you talk to a lawyer." I had another one come and say, "Your business plan is trash. Like, it doesn't say anything. Like, you're not fleshing all this kind of stuff out." I knew what I needed to do, but in talking to people, you have, what people don't understand is that the secret sauce is you. You are the business. No matter what you do, you are the business.
Yes.
You can have 100,000 different, pressure washing businesses, but what makes you stand out? Are you paying attention to your costs? Are you giving just that little bit of extra service? Are you just better with people? Or, and working in that network, and asking the questions and letting everybody else give you their perspectives on how they did it without
Right.
the fear of losing what you're trying to do, I think is the key. People are, yeah, just be open about it. You don't have to give them your business plan. You don't have to tell them what your, AI loves to use the word moat. You don't have to tell them what the moat is. You don't have to tell them what the back end, this is how I know I'm going to succeed because I'm the only one doing X. But if you don't know how to do Y and Z, ask the question. Just reach out. And we're so stovepiped because we're afraid it's going to slip out of our fingers. Uh, that's honestly one of the biggest things that I see, so many people struggling with.
Right. So you mentioned the word few times already, and that's a word that I resonate with very much, right? Because I mean, I play soccer. I do a lot of things still at my age that I've always liked to be part of a team. That's just me, right? I never wanted to be the guy at the front or the general or nothing. I always wanted just to be part of the team, right? I just wanted to do my part and feel good about support whoever. But network, you mentioned the word network. How is networking, or at this point in stage in your business, how are you using networking? Do you think you need to network more, or how important do you think networking is in general?
George, I'll be honest with you. I'm failing at it. 100%. 100% I'm failing at it.
I had so several years ago before Afghanistan, I think it was around 2010 to 2012. I won't go out and say that I was popular on social media, but we had started building an audience with a group dad blogging site at the time, and it was starting to get nationally recognized. We worked with people like Walmart. We worked with Chobani had a line for a little while called Champions. We worked with them to do marketing. We worked with
Yogurt?
yes, okay, yep. Omaha Steaks did that was actually the first paid thing that we had done with them. Worked with Turner Farms, or Taylor Farms rather. So we were starting to get recognized, and we started getting interviews with people. Like we did an interview. One of our dads did an interview with John from John and Kate Plus 8, way back in the day when he was trying to do a career comeback. in the definition of an audience back then, according to like television standards, was having an audience of 10,000 uniques a day. And we hit that and surpassed, partially because of the John and Kate thing. But when I left that organization, I also left social media. And when I did that, of course, everything falls to zero. So my old connections, not necessarily there. They're all busy. They're all doing different things in life. The new connections, I'm trying to meet with. I know what my target audience is, but I'm trying to meet them where they are, and it's hard because technically I'm a B2B business.
Right.
Well, what are they doing during the day? They're running their own business. What are they doing at night? Trying to rest, or they're still running their own business, because entrepreneurship is 16 to 20 hours a day on any given project. So it's extremely difficult to reach out to those folks and really get that stuff back. Now my impressions are starting to go up. I'm starting to see the trend line, do its thing. But balancing marketing and how to build that network back up with and reach the people that I need to reach, it's tough. I mean, it's really hard now, and I'm concentrated on LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And I've got a plan to start working my way into Reddit, but Facebook is just not feasible for what I'm trying to do. Everything there is basically just a feed for your own business. They'll put out information. That's it. I'm not a TikTok person, and this business, quite honestly, isn't for TikTok. Instagram, maybe there's a little potential to it. Pinterest, definitely not. I'm captured in this little tiny section, but trying to get people to listen in two feeds that are nothing but just push, 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 push.
Right.
And now you've got AI just feeding it in automatically. Which quite honestly, that's not really different. That happened way back in the day in 2012, 2015 as well, with different kinds of tools that were back then. But yeah, reaching people, it's really hard, and it's detrimental to my business.
That affects everyone, Brandon. I think like you just hit it right on the head. I think, and this is when I look at LinkedIn again. I'm just going to use LinkedIn because, so there's just so much information, just like you said, right? And it's just like now every commercial is run your business, do your business, grow your business, use the AI. Oh, you're using AI, but you need to use this AI. And people really don't understand what AI is. I don't think, except for people like you who, actually work with AI, right? I mean, I'm in my business. I use AI for certain things, uh, but at a very low level, right? And I have a team that does everything else. But um, yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, right? And you would think that with all of these platforms and with all of this reach, easy reach, and the videos and everything that we do, that there would be a more of a, wow, let's all get together, right? He's saying kumbaya together, but it's like, I think it's drawing people away more, right? To some extent, right? I'm not saying unless you've got millions of dollars where you can just overtake everything and plaster yourself everywhere, right? So,
Closer, but never more separate. Yeah.
right, exactly. So, wow. So how do you balance your life out now, man? Now let's just get more into your introspect. Now, how do you balance work, family, livelihood? What are you using? What's your daily routine?
I'll be honest, I don't really have a routine.
Right.
That was one of the beauties of getting out and starting my own business, is that I wanted that flexibility and that freedom to do what I needed to do when I needed to do it, which just isn't possible in corporate. Now, honestly, my system doesn't work for everybody because I mean, I retired as a senior major. Like, but I'm doing okay with my retirement, and
Right.
things
Sure,
like that. Yeah, but as far as the transition went, not only the transition from service, but transition in life, I'd also gotten a divorce. So I'm basically starting over fresh with everything. Now, my youngest daughter lives with me right now. She's older, she's 23, but she'll be going on to finish doing her stuff, whatever from there. But uh, I basically learned how to live within my means, which is wildly understated and wildly important. So I just don't spend a lot. Uh, So my dollar stretches fairly well, and it's enough to allow me the space to be able to try and get this business going. Now, I do have a hard backstop. I gave myself a year, and if I didn't see growth within that year, then I would absolutely, yeah, jump out and get back into the grind. And place myself back into the system. Um, but I gave myself that amount of time to really kind of work through it. But what it kind of looks like is I do a lot of prep work at night. I do a lot of research at night when I'm just kind of sitting around watching TV or just kind of bored or doing whatever. And then during the day, I'll get up and I'll already have my workflow kind of planned for what I want to accomplish. And then going back into your joke about breaking stuff, I break things all day long. That's you to refine my system. I have a couple of products that are finished. I'm actually very close with my next tool that's coming out. It's a freelance timekeeping tool that I actually needed for my own business to keep myself on track because I needed to start keeping a log of how long it's taking me to do things. But I'll go through that. I'd still take my standard lunch breaks. I've got the freedom to be able to take a nap if I want to take a nap. But then I usually work until about 7 o'clock at night.
So if you wanted to give us then a perspective of what your business is now, what you want and how you can help, go ahead and take 30 minutes, 30 seconds, seconds, whatever you want. Just what exactly do you have to offer us veterans, and how exactly does your business solve situations maybe for business owners, or just go ahead.
So the biggest thing is feedback, and that's why I try to connect with as many people as possible because I can do the research on common small business challenges and the most common small business challenges. I mean, there's people that keep statistics on this constantly, but getting the feedback. What are the problems that you are really kind of faced with? Because a lot of them are small and we can fix them without a tool. So there's a small level of, I call it anti-consultancy in there because I'm not just going to theorize about what needs fixed, but ask for the help, get the answers, make things better. When you start getting into those other challenges and those other things that are more of a high level fix that you might need, like the timekeeping tool or a communication guide to be able to help a new manager shorten that learning curve to be able to effectively talk to their employees. Like those are the kinds of things that are offered and out there. But in order for me to be the most effective I can be, I have to know what real challenges are. So that connection, that community that we're talking about, putting those things together, finding those places to where we can all commiserate on the issues of the day
Right.
and get to a solution, I think is actually what I would really love to see more than anything. And not just for my business, but for everybody that's doing something similar.
So we'll put all your handles on the video once it gets published, and all your contact, your websites. So, as we start to wrap up a little bit, what advice do you think you would want to, if you were sitting in a room, and I ask this to everyone, if you were sitting in a room of transitioning veterans, whether they're officers or enlisted, if you had, 2 minutes to talk to these people, I mean, from in hindsight now and everything you've learned, right? And we all have a different path and we all have different things we've experienced, but from your heart, what is something that you might want to share with the group?
First of all, have a plan. It doesn't have to be a great plan, but have a plan. And all of the tap resources and transition resources will help you kind of put that together. But really think through what it is you want to do, what you're capable of doing, and what resources you have to be able to back it up. Once you have that plan, absolutely plan for it to break. It happened to me 2020 January, or 2025 January happened. And my entire plan for going into government service and being a GS employee or contractor all went straight down the tubes. 100%, my entire plan just flushed. And the job market got very, very difficult with all the layoffs and all of the rest of the kind of stuff. And if it can happen to me with all of the credentials and the experience and the things and whatever, it can happen to just about anybody. Yeah. And then just be prepared. If that's what you want to do, is you want to go and reach out and search for those kinds of things, be prepared to move because it's not always going to be where you are. And if you don't have the flexibility to go where the things are, then you're doing yourself a disservice. I was not willing to move, and it cut 80% of my options easily. So yeah, have a plan for that plan to not be a plan. Or no plan ever lasts, past contact. I think it's just right. Yep. And just plan on going somewhere else. Just like if you were in the service, plan on having to go somewhere else.
Let me ask you this: do you take time during the day to meditate or to pray or to kind of like just how do you find some quiet time for you? How do you balancing all these crazy life situations that we all go through? What do you find space? Use space.
I've unfortunately been able to really push myself hard throughout my career, to the point that I have experienced burnout a couple of times. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a praying man, but as far as the meditation, not really. But what I do is I just find I know and I start to recognize when I need to step away. So I will step away. Fortunately, with my daughter living here, she's got a little dog that loves to go out for walks. So I'll literally just go out and just kind of walk multiple times a day. Just stand up, get away from the computer. I bought a standing desk so I can sit and do whatever. But it gives me the opportunity to just walk away. And that typically helps me is get out of the thing that's causing you the most strife at the moment. Walk away from it, come back to it, and see if your perspective is different. And I think that's what I do. So I end up watching a lot of TV sometimes, I think, but kind of is what it is. I try to read more, but great plans never quite works out. But yeah, I think just step away. I think is the biggest thing.
Okay. And have faith in what you know, and you've already come through the service, you've survived that, and if you can survive that, then deals,
Yep.
you know.
The rest of it, all you got to do is just pick up the skills. You read the brand.
So thank you so much. Any last words you'd like to share with the community or anything? Can they reach out to you if they have questions? People that have you have two master's degrees. So I mean, there's people out there that have that type of preparation, and like you said, sometimes you have to know how to, wow, just because I have this, it's not really affecting anything.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah, if anything, I would say I'm probably a little too helpful, for my own good. So, yes, you can DM me on anything I'm on. My email is out there. It's the business email, but you can email, ask questions. If we start getting into stuff that's a little bit more business related, we'll have a discussion about that. But I'm always happy to have a quick jam session
Sure.
and kind of work through some stuff because a lot of times, honestly, they're very small problems. They just feel really big because you're in the middle of it.
Right.
At times you just need that recentering to get you on the right track, and that honestly is free, for everybody. You just have to know where to look.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I mean, by all means, follow me everywhere. I'll definitely follow you back. I'm not looking for that 100,000 to 1 ratio. That's nonsense. But yeah, I'm here for anybody that needs me.
Well, thank you, Brandon. So that wraps up today's episode of Aaron's Corner. A huge thank you to Brandon Duncan for sharing his journey. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the conversation by sharing your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Until next time, keep pushing forward, stay strong, and remember, you're never alone in this journey. And I thank you again, Brandon. God bless you. And, we'll be in touch, man. And I'm also here for you. All right. Yeah.